you there will be no laws restricting abortion passed when I'm Prime Minister.
Okay, so me again. I keep seeing Pierre Poilievre say that he promises not to restrict abortion. Here we go with the policy declaration again. Let's check out what he really means. So again, with page 5, we have on issues of moral conscience, such as abortion, the definition of marriage, and euthanasia, the Conservative Party acknowledges the diversity of deeply held personal convictions among individual party members and the right of members of Parliament to adopt positions in consultation with their constituents and to vote freely. The very next page, page 6, the Conservative Party believes that Parliament, rather than the courts, is the law-making body of Canada. So basically, they want to support legislation to remove the authority from the Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal to regulate, receive, investigate, or adjudicate complaints related to Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act. So they basically want to remove all authority from the Canadian Human Rights Commission. So this is a little bit sketchy. We've got page 12 now. And what they say is, we support the privatization of crown corporations that compete directly with comparable services from existing private sector institutions. We support the creation of an independent chief scientist who would advise and report to Parliament on scientific matters. So in other words, they want to pick somebody who they deem to be the ultimate scientist, chief scientist, and that person is going to make all rules and laws concerning science. So who would they pick? So let's move on to page 23. We affirm Canadians have the freedom and right to refuse vaccines for moral, religious, medical, or other reasons. In other words, mandatory vaccines they want to discontinue. This is no surprise. They've been saying this for years. They've been complaining about the COVID vaccine. They've been complaining about everything else. But with the rise of the measles in the US right now, do you really think our children should not be vaccinated against the measles? So on page 23, in the section 85, Assisted Human Reproduction and Related Research, this field should be governed by principles that respect human individuality, integrity, dignity, and life. In recognition of the ethical and scientific concerns around research using human embryos, we support an initial 3-year prohibition on embryonic research and call on the federal government to encourage its granting agencies to focus on more promising adult stem cell research. So they're saying they want to implement their own scientist to say what is acceptable and what's not. And then that scientist is going to decide whether or not a fetus has personhood, because that's what they're going after. Page 24. Abortion should be explicitly excluded from Canada's maternal and child health program in countries where Canadian aid is delivered, since it's extremely divisive and often illegal. Where do you think Canadian aid is delivered? Canada. Now, considering the Conservative government's past voting record, we all know that previous MPs have voted against abortion and against women's rights and against gay marriage. That's what they have stood up and said with their full chest. So we already know how they feel about it. Now they want to allow doctors to make conscious moral decisions. So right now in Canada, if a doctor does not believe in abortion, that's fine. They don't have to perform one, but they have to be willing to refer you to somebody else who can do the procedure. Pierre Poilievre wants to take that away. He wants doctors to be able to make decisions and not be able to be held accountable for their choices. So while he may not implement a law specifically to take away women's rights and abortions, what he's going to do is limit the ability to get one by privatizing healthcare and by allowing doctors to refuse to do the service. He's not going to do it outright. He's not going to pass a bill outright canceling abortion or limiting abortion. He's going to do it the back doorway. He's going to stop you from getting access to it. He's going to back doctors that say no. And then they're talking about changing funding to universities that don't follow their scientific principles. What scientific principles? You mean the ones from the one guy that they want to assign the chief of science? So whatever that guy's beliefs are what are going to be imposed on our colleges and universities when they study medicine? This is the way for the Conservative Party to get in the back door to create the status of a fetus as personhood. And if they do that, it's a slippery slope to what happens with abortion. They might not say it's illegal to have an abortion, but they're sure going to do their damnedest to make sure you don't have access to one. And if they can do that, they can do anything to anyone. They've literally talked about banning gender affirming care for minors. They've talked about banning any sort of gender transition. What about a person who lost their breasts due to a mastectomy? Did you know that reconstructive surgery is actually gender affirming care? Did you know that women that are going through menopause that get hormone replacement therapy, that's gender affirming care? Did you know that men who consistently have low testosterone levels to the point where it's affecting their health and well-being are given testosterone to help them get through this situation? That's gender affirming care. Women who take birth control, not because they want to stop having children, but because they have terribly, terribly painful cycles every month. They choose this birth control to help them out. That's a gender affirming care. So if they can limit your access to gender affirming care, they can limit your access to anything. Pierre Poilievre is lying to you. He doesn't care about women. He doesn't care about women's rights. He doesn't care about gay marriage. He doesn't care about trans people. He doesn't care about anybody that's different than him. He's literally stated out loud he thinks immigrants should be deported. Yet his wife's uncle crossed illegally and he actually helped this man to get citizenship. It's not about what's good for Canada. It's what is good for Pierre Poilievre. And that's what he's running on. And none of you are seeing this. He is going to take his ideologies and put them into place in this country. And he's going to use every single rule or law or loophole to be able to do that. He will blame Carney for using tax loopholes in the Cayman Islands when it's perfectly legal, but yet he has no problem investing in Brookfield himself and making money. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Mark Carney worked for a company and made them money. That was his job. That's what he was hired to do. So he did it legally. But Pierre Poilievre doesn't want to talk about that. He only wants to talk about what's not good for him. This man will trample all over women's rights, trans rights, LGBTQ rights, disabled people's rights. He will trample all over anybody that is not useful to him. He has stood up in the House of Commons time after time. It's on video saying that seniors are a drain on the economy because they don't work anymore. Saying that disabled people are a drain on the economy. People that are quadriplegic and in a wheelchair and require help 24/7. Those people are supposed to get a job and go to work? This man does not care about Canadians. He cares about white male Canadians, men like him. He cares nothing about anybody else. And to have him fool you into thinking that is absolutely blowing my mind right now. The rest of Canada can see this. This is why we're voting. Like 70% of the people are voting for Mark Carney, because we can all see through this charade. I need the rest of you to see it too.